Alrighty, on to the LessWrong posts.
On to the LessWrong posts. I'll start with to spread science, keep it secret. And this is a follow-up to the last one we talked about. This is following the theme of how, scarcity makes information more valuable to people. He posits that no one studies science because they can just Google the answers, and therefore it's boring, so they don't bother Googling it.
Not that they don't study science, but that they don't find it to be valuable. They're like, oh, that's just boring knowledge. Why would I care how a light bulb works?
Yeah. So I guess I have a few thoughts on that. I did participate in an event at Vibe Camp called Human Library, yes. If you wanted to be a book, you wrote down a handful of things that people could walk around the table and see your sheet and be like, oh, that sounds interesting. Let me ask you about that. One of them, I put the Bayesian conspiracy with no context, so if they hadn't heard of the podcast, it would draw eyes. And it did. Then I had to explain, it's a podcast that I'm on, and well, where's the name come from? Okay, so let me explain this. And this is essentially the Bayesian conspiracy, especially in the next post.
Yeah.
For us, it was a joke inside a joke, because that's what Harry names his cabal of two, the projects to unite magic and science. But we had the discussion about keeping science secret to make it more compelling to people. And the guy I was talking with really disagreed. He didn't see any value in that. We were trying to generate examples beyond the obvious of nuclear weapons, of the kinds of things that would be valuable to keep from people, and the kinds of things that people should be allowed to know without any training. On the easy side, it seems like keeping nutrition information secret seems like a bad idea. Although the information itself isn't secret. People can play with light bulbs. It's the idea is that you don't get to know how we found this out unless you want to learn how.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Yeah, this is always my excuse, in real life and at Vibe Camp, but I was too tired to put up my best argument. But yeah, so the information is available. It's not like you have to attend a university for 5 years to have light bulbs in your house. You just don't get to know how they work unless you don the robe and go to the middle of the night ceremony.
Yeah.
What do you think? Do you think that this is the kind of thing that would actually be a positive on society?
It'd be more fun.
And that's really the point of this post, actually.
Yeah. I don't think it would be a positive for society, no, especially because so many kids, I don't know, actually, so many, maybe that's an exaggeration, but some number of kids in poor, I was going to say in poor villages overseas, but even here in rural America, some kid in a rural town might just get interested in how to make a certain thing or how something works and Google it and teach themselves a whole hell of a lot. I basically taught myself programming way back in junior high and high school, and that was just freely available. And I know of people who have taught themselves a number of science or engineering things just because they're really interested in it. So that seems really good to just have that knowledge that anyone can look it up if they want to and learn stuff. It would be nice if people treated these sorts of knowledges as reverently as they do the elder mysteries of Urdu or whoever the hell. But on the whole, I think we're probably better off how it is.
I think so. And I do think it'd be more fun. And I do like that the guild, I think, leans into this a bit. I at least know that all of their council member meetings, they wear silly hats. Maybe they'll do that for, higher level progression as things move along, make the participants wear funny hats and do some jokey ritual, but all with tongue firmly in cheek, I think I agree. You and I and Yudkowsky are the kind of people that would find forbidden knowledge enticing, but there's lots of stuff that I'm not allowed to know that I just don't care to know. And maybe it's because the answers just aren't actually findable. My mind's drawn to politics just because we're talking about the presidents earlier, but Trump was the first president in 30 or 40 years not to surrender his tax returns when he was running. That would have been information that people would have liked to see, but nobody really tried to get it because I think they maybe just understood that they couldn't. Yeah, I'm trying to think of other, are there secrets out there that I really care to know? I don't know. I guess especially as a kid, being told you're not allowed to know made it more compelling, right?
Yeah.
Now it just makes it annoying.
I've never cared about any president's tax returns, right? I know they all submit them. I don't know what the number has been for any of them because who gives a fuck? But the fact that Trump was no, I'm not going to give you my tax returns. Now I want to know.
Right.
And I never wanted to know for anybody else. Yeah, it's absolutely a thing where if someone tells you no, you can't know, you're hey, wait a minute.
That's a good point. I never looked over any of the other candidates' tax returns once. It was just more it was essentially him saying, I have stuff to hide and fuck you. And so it's well, now I want to know what you're hiding. Yeah, and that does make it more compelling.
I think a lot of secret societies have secrets. I mean, if we're really going down this route, like Scientologists have literally the secret knowledge that you have to advance and pay to get access to, and are very upset when, well, when South Park made that whole episode just outlining exactly what they believe.
Right. Well, but they suck is the thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I'm trying to think of things we'd want to know that are worth knowing, not lies that we're hiding from us.
Okay. There's a lot of scientific research articles that are hidden behind paywalls, which really sucks. It's not that big a deal, but I don't want to pay $40 just to look up something when I'm having an argument with someone online. Like, I'm not going to pay $40 to prove that someone is wrong online.
And he points out the mundanity of that as well in this post about how, a mere paywall makes it, it's one layer of secrecy, but it's not really secret. It just means like, yeah, you need to spend money, and that's not a cool kind of secret either.
He did have the interesting take that he thinks maybe future generations will regard papers that weren't in open access journals as not really science. That if it's not part of the public knowledge of humankind, it isn't science, and if you make people pay to read it, that disqualifies it.
I definitely like that idea. I mean, the argument's been super obvious just especially in cases where it's publicly funded science. And it's like, you mean I already paid for this,
Yeah, but every now and then you get one of those questions like, what do you think we are doing right now that future generations will believe is atrocious? And it's always almost always something like animals eating meat or factory farming animals. It's like, yeah, okay, everyone knows that. But like this kind of thing, if you had to pay to access scientific knowledge, it's not actually scientific knowledge. Like, that's an actual interesting answer to that question,
It's interesting. I mean, to me, it's scientific knowledge if it's right, whether or not you had to pay to see it. But I could see that being like an egregious mistake we made along the way. Of course, it's the opposite of what he's kind of advocating for here, right?
Sorta, yeah. I think this this post is more of a fun thought experiment, a pointing out of how humans are than something he actually really advocates.
Yeah, agreed.
But it could be fun to try. Like, one of the things he points out is if everyone had a cult around their department, like of physics or of chemistry or whatever, then when Scientologists have their cult and their secret knowledge, people would start asking Scientologists things like, well, why haven't you given any public demonstrations of your 8th level powers like the physicists do? Or why should I study your cult when the dentists of doom can do very impressive things? And you can't do anything.
I work at a company with like 50 people and maybe 12 or 15 software engineers, and the platform team manages all of the whatever infrastructure to keep the app running, and they have access to all the secret passwords that let you actually write to the database directly or whatever. And I've occasionally got my hands on some of these things, and I always keep them even though I never plan on using them, just because they're secret and maybe I won't be able to use them later. Like, just the fact that like I can't just go to the knowledge directory that we have or whatever for the company and dig these up. The fact that like it is a secret that was handed to me makes me like actually save it because like, this is secret information.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is a funny quirk of ours. I think maybe there is some fruit to pull here.
I want to comment on a couple things in here which coincidentally worked very well with the topic that Brandon had, which happens a lot with these LessWrong posts where they just seem to somehow magically dovetail with our topic without us actually planning it. He says here, if humanity had never made the mistake, the religion mistake, never gone down the religious path, never learned to fear anything that smacks of religion, then maybe the PhD granting ceremony would involve litanies and chanting because, hey, that's what people like. Why take the fun out of everything? So there's a lot of emphasis on the fun of these things in this post, and I agree with him. They're a lot of fun, and we do like these sorts of things. But like, this isn't just fun. It is fun, but it's also a powerful thing that is part of our psychology for what I'm assuming are important reasons. And I think that one of the reasons it's feared is because it is powerful. That like using those litanies and chanting managed to give groups a large amount of influence or power over their adherents, and that sometimes it's right to be afraid of power. Like we're afraid of nuclear things because we can do amazing things with them, and if they're misused, we can do amazingly horrible things with them.
Yeah. I also just like the idea of making things fun. Some people during graduation ceremonies will bedazzle their caps and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I think Richard Feynman walked up the stairs backwards to receive his Nobel Prize.
Interesting.
Just because
he's a fun dude.
Yeah, he was. I think that just summarizes the kind of guy he was. If anyone hasn't read it, there's a great audiobook of Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman. And I think he has a handful of autobiographies, but that was one I liked the most because it was the most fun. A couple of them seemed more serious and somber, but this is mainly just about antics going back to childhood.
Nice.
And he'd occasionally like crack safes. He was interested in that, but then he's disappointed to learn that like the tips were all just like look in the secretary's desk to see if they've written down the code or whatever. But then often that was actually the case. So
Oh my God. Cool.
yeah, just like now people put sticky notes on their desk with their passwords or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah,
Which they wouldn't have to do if they didn't make you change your password every 3 months.
exactly.
So I can memorize a password, but I can't memorize 4 new passwords every year for just 3 months at a time.
My dad complains about that, and he gets mad because they will his password will be something like fucking password 1, and then when they tell him to change it, he tries to do fucking password 2, but then it's like, oh, this is too close to your old password.
Oh my God.
And it's like, and first of all right, so then I'll get off this, but the forcibly making people change their passwords is actually advised against by the National Institute of Security Technology.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's bad security practice because then it makes people forget them and have to write them down and stuff.
Yeah.
If you let them set one secure one once, then they won't forget it. Just make them set an actually secure one.
We should let more people know about this, especially our bosses.
Right.
So he also says that people seem to have holes in their minds, and by holes in their minds, he means like the quote-unquote God-shaped hole in your soul, right? People seem to have holes in their minds for esoteric knowledge, deep secrets, the hidden truth. We've just gotten into the habit of presenting the hidden truth in a very unsatisfying way, wrapped up in false mundanity. This just immediately like struck my my attention sensors, because this is kind of like the same thing I've been calling like the hooks that we have in our psychology that I think, again, have been put there by evolution. And there are these things in us that want to be grabbed by various practices. I hadn't exactly thought of the idea of esoteric knowledge and hidden truths as one of these things, but like he has a damn good point. This is one of those things. And that's a good thing to keep in mind and to add to my notes. And I do think this is exactly the problem that Brandon was talking about with the secular churches, the atheist church, that they don't have a satisfying way of engaging with those. The esoteric knowledge, the hidden truth, there's nothing in the church that grabs onto those and drags the adherents in with them. And that is one of the big reasons they failed.
Yeah, I think there's something to that.
And importantly, the next thing Eliezer says is that if the holes for secret knowledge are not filled by true beliefs, they will be filled by false beliefs. If it was it's just there and it's not engaged with, no big deal. People can have friends or not have friends. But seeing more and more people getting engaged by Mormonism or Catholicism or something, like intelligent, rational people, it's really kind of pointing out to me that if they are left unengaged long enough, people seem to get, like he says, it's filled by a false belief, and we don't have a true belief to grab onto those things right now, and that's a big danger issue problem.
Agreed. Yeah, I mean, people will
failure mode of rationality.
Yeah, people will make up answers if they're not available, or they'll believe whatever lies someone else is willing to sell them. Which could be another downside of actually keeping science secret this way, is that someone could be willing to sell them false explanations for less. Right?
That's true. How would you know which science is the real science and which science is the Scientology if it was all hidden away and cloaked in mystery?
I guess you'd want demonstrations from their 8th level physicists or something, right?
That's true. That would work. As long as it's actual physics and not like, James Randi magician stuff.
And that's the thing, though, is it'd be hard to tell.
Yeah.
There's that fun thing that a handful of people have done, where they'll hold a cannonball at the end of a pendulum swing, like release it, and then stand there as it approaches their face and not move, because they know that it won't move further than how far it was raised or whatever. I'm not describing this well. That's sort of a demonstration, but any snake oil salesman could give you some false explanation for why that's the case, right? I guess I don't know what an 8th level physicist could show me that would be like, oh, that's amazing. I now need to know your secrets. Maybe
he could take a magnet and some copper wire and make a light bulb glow.
That would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I wasn't creative enough or didn't think about it long enough. There are totally things they could show me.
Also, finally, remember when we were reading Plane Crash?
Yes.
I think this is how Dathalan works.
I agree. I was going to say the same thing. And
okay.
I think that this, I don't know if there's a canonical explanation for why that why Dothalon doesn't have a history going back 100 years, but I think this is, if there is one, this is it. Is that I don't think it was some calamity or something. I think it was just on purpose. The idea is that it made everyone in Dothalon more scientifically curious. I wonder still though, a lot of people today, their lives are too busy and they have other priorities. Like they even if it was inaccessible to them, they just wouldn't care to learn. And that's fine. Like, as long as the lights come on, I don't really care how they work. I could imagine that being a lot of people's default.
I mean, that's already a lot of people's default, right?
Well, yeah, but I think that what Yudkowsky's positing here is that if they were told you're not allowed to know why light bulbs work, that would make them more curious. And I think it would for some, but for others, they'd just be like, fuck it, as long as it still works.
Yeah, it'd be much more of a living in a demon-haunted world sort of feeling.
How do you mean?
I mean, like, right now, we flip on a light switch and we don't know how it works. The vast majority of us. I would be very hard-pressed to tell you all the details of it, right?
I couldn't make a light bulb for you. Yeah.
Right, yeah, no. I'm not sure I could explain all of it. Certainly the electricity part would be the hardest part for me to explain. But we know it's all mechanical. It's all physics. There's nothing spooky going around. In this sort of world, it'd be like, well, the cult of physicists knows, and they do some kind of physics magic to it, and like everything around you, from like your vacuum cleaner to your car, is like some other cult keeping mysterious secrets. And like, is there spirits involved? They say no, but like, we don't know what they're actually doing there. Like, everything would feel much more mysterious, and like things are just alive and unknowable around you.
Yeah, and I think to some people that would definitely spur them to be curious, and for others they just be fine with a non-explanation or no explanation.
I think those people might actually be happier too, like the Keats type of people who don't want to know that the rainbow is refracted light. They'd be like, yeah, the world is magic, all the cults make things work with their culty magic, and I love it.
Do you think Keats would have been happier or more pissed if Newton said, I know how rainbows work and me and all my friends know, but we're not telling you?
Definitely happier.
You think so?
Oh yeah.
Huh. Because I don't think Keats knew how rainbows worked. He just knew that he could know.
Yeah.
I think it was just knowing that there was an answer.
I mean, knowing that it was just mundane stuff and not magic, I think was his issue. And the cults would make it, oh no, this is mysterious and spooky, and you got to do special rites and bathe in the blood of an ox before you can really know,
Yeah, maybe. I think maybe Keats would just be a hard guy to please, but maybe I'm modeling him incorrectly.
I mean, that makes the knowledge romantic, and Keats was just a classic romanticist.
That's true.
That's all he wanted, man.
Yeah. And I think the next post, if you're ready to move on.
Yes, let's.
Initiation ceremony. Is this the first kind of like little cutaway we get to the character Brennan and the Bayesian conspiracy?
I think this is the origin of the Bayesian conspiracy, yeah.
Nice. All right, we finally made it. It's been 7 and change years, and now here we are explaining where the name came from. There's not much to go through here. It's a hypothetical of him going through a learning rites ceremony, but there was one bit that I really liked where he's given some convoluted, it's just a paragraph. If 3/4 of the humans in this room are women, and 3/4 of the women and half of the men belong to the heresy of virtue, and I'm a virtuist, what is the probability that I'm a man? And Brennan says 2/11, and then there was silence, and then people started laughing. And then the guide says it's 1/6. Like, there's this, it's done well and portrayed well in the story of Brennan kind of like, oh shit, I'm sweating, I'm freaking out. There's no way. And then someone's like, just say 1/6. And he's like, no, and he breaks down the math and he's like, also, I don't believe you. There's an odd number of people in this room. I loved that because that seems like a great last secret challenge of the trial. He went through everything else, but also you've got to pass the conformity test.
Yeah.
And I thought that was kind of just a fun thing to throw in there.
Oh, yeah. It was great. It looked like classical Bayesian probability updating. And so then when at the end it says, you are now a novice of the Bayesian conspiracy, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So it was literally Bayesian updating. This is great.
Yay.
Or I don't know if it's even updating, but it's you needed to be able to do that sort of Bayesian math to get it done. So that was fantastic.
I mean, it is updating with every new piece of information in the paragraph the guy gave him, right? But it also just it seemed like kind of like the classic, Harry James Potter Evans Vera's style of pointing out, like, also there's an odd number of people in this room. Not only are those numbers too neat, but there's no way you're right. So fuck you. not only is my math correct, but also you're wrong.
You know what's interesting? 10 years ago, I would have wanted to join this kind of thing and done the work to like be able to do this sort of math on the fly. Like I would have put in the hours. And now it's just like, I don't want to do the math. And like originally when I read this, I commented like, I am not smart enough to be a novice of the Bayesian conspiracy, which is kind of ironic. But like thinking more on it, like I am. I could put in the work and train myself because I know years ago I was right on the edge and just didn't do it because I had other things going on and there was no Bayesian conspiracy to join. So what's the point? But like now I'm at the point where I wouldn't do it. And I don't know if I've gotten lazier or what exactly has changed that I am no longer driven to join the Bayesian conspiracy if there is this I think maybe it's because since the initiation rite requires this much math, I would have to, that's a sign that I have to find math already fun and engaging because that's mostly what we're going to be doing. And so I don't want to join the club just to join the club anymore. I want to join the club because that's what I want to do. And what they're doing isn't actually what I want to do right now.
Yeah, I read we talked about it a few weeks ago, the luck lottery that Scott Alexander mentioned. And I also share his lack of love for math, and it's nothing against math. And if before someone messages me and says, Steven, someone just hasn't explained it to you right, check out the short post. It's actually really short by Scott Alexander standards, or excuse me, the
Fascination lottery.
Fascination lottery. That's right, because he gives great analogies to every response people give him for, oh, you just need to have math explained right or whatever. Here's my trick: is I took that paragraph, plugged it into ChatGPT, and it showed me the math, and it came up with the same number as Brennan.
Oh, nice.
And so, like, I know it's kind of cheating because I did do the math in my head, but I did have the math performed, and I did follow the numbers, and was able to, like, watching it break it down for me. I'm like, okay, yeah, I could see what you did there, and you came to the right answer.
It's really weird because when I was 16, I was really into the math. I enjoyed the math, and now I don't anymore. And I don't know. I know I've said this before, but I feel like a different person, and the old me's from decades ago are dead now. And that is, that's kind of a shame. I sort of mourn them, and I don't know how they could have been kept alive.
Dead, but not forgotten.
There we go. That's awesome.
Our interests change and our aptitudes adjust to new things that we find fun. I think that if you were the same person that you were 30 years ago, you'd be a very boring person.
Maybe.
The 46-year-old 16 or whatever, the 40-something 16-year-old in you would be probably happy to be around or whatever, but you'd be a 16-year-old.
Yeah.
Like you've had decades of growth. You wouldn't be able to have that if you stagnated.
I did just recently read that SSRIs seem to preserve brain plasticity, which is very interesting for me because, like, I'm thinking if I hadn't been on SSRIs my entire life, would I be much more the same kind of person I was 2-3 decades ago? And now that I'm weaning myself off them, does that mean I'm going to lock myself into this personality for the rest of my life? I don't know how I feel about this. I've on the one hand kind of loved changing and exploring new things all the time, and on the other hand, I do mourn for the dead Inuyashas of the past, which is a weird thing to say.
You can always resurrect them whenever you want, though, in your mind, Like,
I can't, though.
I can. I mean, I guess I was going to say I can do that with me, but I honestly can barely remember who I was 2 weeks ago. So, like, I don't know. Yeah, the younger Stevens are gone, but they helped shape the current Steven, and I'm happy about that.
Yeah,
for whatever it's worth, if you're going to lock in at some point in your life, now seems like a good time because you seem, like in a happy, good spot,
I am in an incredibly happy point in my life. Yeah.
So
overall.
Yeah, if you're going to, lock in some traits, this seems like the prime time.
Yeah, but it's also less technical and less mathy of a person, and I've always found that those are just. This feels also weird to say, but it feels like technical and mathy are morally good in my opinion, which is weird, but like I feel like less of a good person because I'm less interested in those things.
I think we're just inculcated that way because of the circles we run in. And yes, like it makes me less impressive at LessWrong meetups because I can't show math or whatever when I'm talking about stuff. But the thing is, I wouldn't have a shred of interest in math if it weren't for my friend circles, and it's only because of them that I make an effort to try to keep up at all. And so if it's not really for me, but just for like my social standing, that doesn't seem like a good reason. I mean, there's also just the fact that way you've got little God calculators in our pockets. And
Right.
as long as you know what you're trying to do, the thing can do it for you. Maybe there's something fun about doing it by hand or whatever. But like, if all I want is the answer, then I can get that. It's just, I think you need to know enough math to know the kinds of things available to you.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing with programming, is just knowing the things in your tool belt. And that's why like learning any new language is a lot easier than learning your first. It's just like, how do I do this in this language?
Yeah. Well, there's one last thing in this which I wanted to pull out just because I thought it was so freaking awesome and I loved it. Brennan, before he's let into the final secret room, is asked, do you want to know? And he says, yes, I want to know. And then the figure asks, know what exactly? And Brennan's like, oh shit, is this a test? Like, what's going on here? And sits and ponders on it for a while. And then ultimately the answer he comes back with is, it doesn't matter. The answer is still yes. Like, he just wants to know everything. And I was like, that is the coolest fucking answer in the world, and I love Brennan. And it was accepted by the secret figure.
It's a good answer. I would think that if you were at the end of your several year training through to become a level 8 physicist or something, that you would know the secrets that you want the answers to. Like, I finally want to know the secret of the atom. I'm told that stuff is made of small stuff. I want to know what that stuff is. But yeah, his fully generic answer of just like, yes, is a great answer, and I liked it too.
Well, we are now novices of the Bayesian conspiracy.
All right.
Now that we got to this post.
Took us a little while.
For next time, we will be reading the LessWrong posts, Hand versus Fingers, and Angry Atoms.